Most men think cheating begins with a hotel room, a hidden message, or another man's name flashing across a phone screen. No. It starts much earlier than that. It starts the moment her energy toward you changes and your peace quietly disappears. And the dangerous part is this. She may still be calling you babe, still sitting next to you at dinner, still acting normal enough to make you question your own instincts. That's how a lot of men lose themselves. Not because they were blind, but because they kept ignoring what they already felt. A woman rarely betrays a man suddenly. First, she disconnects emotionally. Then her behavior starts shifting in ways most men never notice until it's too late. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 hidden signs she may already be cheating. Not the obvious signs every man looks for, but the subtle psychological changes that reveal when her loyalty has already started dying behind the scenes. And once you understand them, you'll never look at mixed signals the same way again. Before we go deeper, take 1 second to like this video, subscribe, and let me know what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this message is reaching, because men everywhere are dealing with the same quiet confusion, just in different rooms, different cities, different relationships. And if this topic already feels personal, comment, I felt it. Now stay with me, because the first sign is subtle, and most men mistake it for something positive. The first hidden sign is when she suddenly becomes a little too comfortable. And I need you to pay attention here, because this is where a lot of men get fooled. Most men expect a cheating woman to become nervous, secretive, protective over her phone, distant in obvious ways. But many women do the exact opposite. They become strategically relaxed. At first, it actually feels like the relationship is improving. She starts volunteering little pieces of information you never asked for. She casually mentions a male co-worker's name without hesitation. She leaves her phone sitting face down on the table and acts completely calm. Maybe she even tells you who texted her before you ask. And because you're a good man, your brain interprets that openness as reassurance. But sometimes it's not reassurance. Sometimes it's psychological camouflage. You see, when a woman starts emotionally stepping outside the relationship, she knows the biggest risk is not getting caught physically. The biggest risk is looking suspicious. The moment you become alert, her freedom shrinks. So instead of acting guarded, she starts feeding you controlled honesty. Tiny harmless truths designed to lower your defenses. That's why some men completely miss the shift. They think, if she was cheating, she wouldn't be this open. Meanwhile, the emotional intimacy between them is quietly dying in the background. And that's the detail most men ignore. Because real honesty creates closeness. Performed honesty only creates comfort. A woman who genuinely feels connected to you becomes emotionally warmer, more present, more invested in your peace. But a woman managing appearances becomes smooth, rehearsed, careful in a different way. Her answers sound almost too clean, too prepared, too emotionally balanced. Have you ever noticed how some people over-explain small things nobody questioned? That's not always innocence. Sometimes it's anxiety trying to look relaxed. She might casually say, "Oh, Jake texted me about work again. He's so annoying." Meanwhile, what she's really doing is normalizing his presence in your mind before you ever become suspicious of it. And slowly, your instincts begin to fall asleep. That's why I always tell men this. Don't just watch transparency. Watch emotional closeness. Because a woman can become more verbally open while becoming emotionally unavailable at the exact same time. That contradiction matters. Maybe she tells you more stories now, but touches you less. Maybe conversations sound lighter, but connection feels colder. Maybe she's physically present while emotionally somewhere else entirely. And deep down, you feel it, even if you can't explain it logically yet. This is where many men make their first mistake. They stop observing because they think the relationship feels safe again. They mistake reduced tension for genuine intimacy. But fake calm is still distance. And I'm not telling you to become paranoid. I'm telling you to become aware. Don't interrogate her. Don't start checking phones like a detective destroying his own dignity. Just observe patterns. Observe energy. Observe whether her openness actually brings you closer or simply keeps you quiet. Because the calmer she suddenly appears, the more carefully you should watch what's disappearing emotionally behind the scenes. And once this performance stops being enough to quiet her guilt, something even more dangerous usually begins. She starts turning the suspicion onto you instead. The second hidden sign is when she suddenly becomes suspicious of you for no clear reason. And this is one of the most psychologically manipulative phases, because it completely shifts the emotional pressure off her and onto you. Out of nowhere, she starts asking strange questions. Who were you texting? Why did you come home so late? Why do you seem distant lately? And you're sitting there confused because nothing about your behavior actually changed. But hers did. This is where many men get trapped emotionally because they immediately go into defense mode. They start over-explaining themselves. They start proving loyalty that was never questioned before. They hand over their phone. They reassure her endlessly. They become desperate to protect trust they never broke in the first place. And the moment that happens, the balance of power changes. Because now, instead of quietly observing her behavior, you're busy defending your own innocence. That's exactly what projection does. You see, guilt has weight. And when someone is carrying hidden guilt, the mind naturally looks for a way to release pressure. Some people confess. Some withdraw emotionally. And others project their behavior onto the person closest to them. In simple terms, she starts treating you like the guilty one because facing her own actions feels too uncomfortable internally. It's emotional misdirection. While you're explaining yourself, she's relaxing. While you're trying to calm her fears, she's buying herself more emotional space. And if you're not careful, you slowly become the man apologizing for crimes you never committed. That's the part that destroys a lot of good men psychologically. Not the cheating itself. The confusion. Because confusion makes a man question his instincts. Confusion makes him abandon his emotional center just to restore peace. And manipulative dynamics thrive inside confusion. Have you ever noticed how some arguments suddenly leave you defending yourself even though the conversation started about her behavior? That's not accidental. A skilled manipulator knows that the best way to escape accountability is to emotionally exhaust the other person first, so she creates emotional smoke. And once the smoke fills the room, clarity disappears. You'll notice something else too. Her accusations often feel emotionally disconnected from reality. She becomes suspicious without evidence. She reacts strongly to harmless things. Sometimes she even studies your reactions more than your actual behavior. Because what she's really looking for is relief from her own internal guilt. And here's the dangerous part. The more loyal you are, the easier you become to manipulate emotionally in this stage. Good men hate being misunderstood, so they over-explain, they overcorrect, they try harder, they become softer, more accommodating, more emotionally available. Meanwhile, the woman projecting onto them often loses even more respect during that process. That's why you must stay grounded here. Do not become emotionally reactive every time she throws suspicion at you. Do not sit in emotional court, defending yourself for hours just because she suddenly feels insecure. Calm men see clearly. Emotional men become easy to control. And I want you to remember this line because it will save you years of emotional damage. Accusations without evidence are often confessions wearing a disguise. Not always, but far more often than most men want to admit. So, if you've ever apologized for something you never did just to restore peace, I want you to understand something tonight. Peace built on false guilt is not peace. It's emotional surrender. And once projection becomes normal inside the relationship, the next thing that usually dies is respect. The third hidden sign is the one most men feel the deepest, even if they struggle to explain it out loud. She starts losing respect for you in subtle, quiet ways. Not all at once. Slowly. Like a slow leak in a tire that eventually leaves the entire relationship flat. At first it seems small. A sarcastic comment here and there. An eye roll when you speak. A dismissive tone during conversations that used to feel warm. She interrupts you more often. She stops listening carefully. Your opinions begin sounding annoying to her instead of valuable. And eventually, your presence starts feeling like an inconvenience instead of comfort. This is where many men become emotionally desperate without realizing it. Because respect is emotional oxygen for a man in a relationship. Once it starts disappearing, he can feel the shift immediately, even if he cannot explain it logically. He starts trying harder, talking softer, giving more, apologizing faster, hoping he can somehow return things back to the way they used to feel. But here's the painful truth. You cannot negotiate respect back into existence, and the more a man begs for it emotionally, the faster it dies. Now let me explain the psychology underneath this, because this part matters. When a woman begins emotionally disconnecting or crossing boundaries behind your back, guilt starts creating internal tension inside her. And human beings naturally look for ways to justify behavior that conflicts with their self-image. So her mind starts rewriting you. Suddenly, your flaws become bigger. Your mistakes become more irritating. Your weaknesses become impossible for her to ignore. Not because you changed overnight, but because her perception of you needs to shift in order for her betrayal to feel emotionally justified. This is why some women become strangely critical right before or during emotional cheating phases. You've changed. You're too controlling. You don't make me happy anymore. You're too sensitive. Notice something important here. These statements are often emotionally vague, hard to solve, hard to defend yourself against. That's because the goal is not resolution. The goal is emotional distancing. If she can mentally downgrade you enough, her guilt becomes lighter. That's the hidden mechanism most men never understand. Disrespect is often emotional preparation for betrayal. And the saddest part? Many loyal men respond to disrespect by becoming even more emotionally available. They think if they love harder, stay calmer, give more reassurance, or become more patient, the warmth will return. But attraction does not grow through emotional self-erasure. The moment a man starts performing for approval, he quietly abandons his own power. And women feel that shift immediately. That's why I tell men this all the time. Never chase respect. Observe it. Protect it. Because once someone starts repeatedly humiliating you emotionally, they are revealing how disconnected they've already become internally. Now, does this mean every disrespectful moment equals cheating? No. Relationships have conflict. Human beings get frustrated. But consistent disrespect without accountability is different, especially when it appears alongside emotional distance, projection, and unexplained behavioral shifts. That combination matters. And here's another truth most men need to hear. A woman preparing to betray you often starts emotionally rewriting the relationship before she physically crosses the line. In her mind, she needs a story where you are no longer the man worth protecting. That's why the warmth disappears first. And this is exactly where many men lose themselves completely. They become reactive, angry, defensive, desperate to regain control emotionally. But emotional chaos only accelerates the collapse. Calmness is power here. Not weakness, not silence from fear. Controlled composure. Because a man who remains emotionally grounded while disrespect is being thrown at him becomes very difficult to manipulate psychologically. And nothing unsettles a manipulative person more than someone they can no longer emotionally control. But once respect dies, peace usually dies right beside it. And that's when the relationship starts filling with constant emotional chaos. The fourth hidden sign is when the relationship suddenly starts feeling emotionally exhausting all the time. Not because of one major event, but because tension slowly becomes the new normal. She gets irritated faster now. Tiny things trigger arguments that never used to matter. Your tone bothers her. Your silence bothers her. The way you answer questions bothers her. Some days, it feels like you can't even breathe correctly around her without setting something off. And at first, most men blame themselves. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe work is overwhelming her. Maybe she's tired. Maybe you actually have changed somehow. So you become more careful, more emotionally cautious. You start walking on eggshells trying to avoid conflict. But that's exactly how emotional chaos traps people. Because once a relationship enters this stage, you stop focusing on truth and start focusing on survival. Your goal becomes avoiding the next argument, instead of understanding why the emotional atmosphere changed in the first place. And that shift is dangerous. You see, when a woman is emotionally involved elsewhere or internally disconnected from the relationship, guilt creates pressure inside her. And pressure always looks for release. One of the easiest ways to release guilt is by creating conflict intense enough to justify emotional distance. In other words, if she can convince herself that the relationship feels toxic, cold, frustrating, or emotionally draining, then pulling away from you starts feeling emotionally reasonable in her mind. That's why the fights often feel strangely disconnected from reality. A small misunderstanding becomes a massive emotional explosion. A harmless comment becomes proof you don't understand her. A quiet night suddenly turns into an argument about your entire character. And the more emotionally reactive you become, the easier it becomes for her to paint you as the problem. That's the trap. Chaos creates emotional confusion. Confusion weakens clarity. And once clarity disappears, manipulation becomes easier to hide. Have you ever noticed how some relationships slowly turn into emotional war zones where one person is constantly trying to restore peace while the other keeps disrupting it? That dynamic is rarely accidental, because constant instability shifts the focus away from accountability. Instead of asking, why has her behavior changed? You start asking, how do I stop upsetting her? And once a man reaches that point psychologically, he usually starts abandoning his own emotional boundaries just to keep the relationship alive. But listen to me carefully here. Peace should not feel impossible around someone who truly loves you. Yes, relationships require patience. Yes, human beings go through difficult seasons. But when emotional instability becomes constant, when tension becomes daily, when your nervous system never feels safe anymore, something deeper is usually happening underneath the surface. And this is where emotional discipline matters most. Do not mirror her chaos. Do not scream louder to regain control. Do not lose your center trying to calm someone determined to create emotional storms, because the man who loses emotional control becomes easier to manipulate, easier to blame, and easier to emotionally exhaust. Stay grounded instead. Sometimes silence reveals more truth than another argument ever will. Because when peace disappears from a relationship, loyalty often disappeared long before the fighting began. And eventually, after enough confusion, enough tension, and enough sleepless nights, your body starts realizing what your mind has been trying to deny the entire time. The fifth hidden sign is the one most men try the hardest to silence. Your intuition already knows something is wrong, not because you found proof, not because you caught her in a lie, but because somewhere deep inside your body, the relationship no longer feels emotionally safe the way it once did. And that feeling can drive a man crazy. Because logic keeps fighting instinct. Your mind says, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm insecure. Maybe I'm just afraid of losing her. Meanwhile, your nervous system keeps sounding the alarm every single day. You notice little things you can't fully explain. Her energy feels different around you. Her warmth feels inconsistent. She's physically present, but emotionally absent. Conversations feel thinner now. Intimacy feels disconnected. Even her silence feels unfamiliar somehow. And the hardest part is this. Most men keep waiting for undeniable proof before they allow themselves to trust what they already feel. That delay destroys them emotionally. Because by the time clear evidence finally appears, the relationship is often already dead emotionally. The betrayal happened internally long before it became visible externally. This is why I tell men not to ignore emotional patterns simply because they cannot explain them perfectly with logic yet. Human beings are constantly reading behavioral shifts subconsciously. Tone changes, timing changes, emotional availability, eye contact, attention, presence. Your body notices these things before your conscious mind catches up. That uneasy feeling in your chest is not always paranoia. Sometimes it's pattern recognition happening beneath the surface. And women know this better than most men realize. That's why some women will repeatedly tell you you're imagining things while their behavior keeps quietly changing at the same time. They know if they can make you doubt your own instincts long enough, they gain more emotional freedom without consequences. So the man starts gaslighting himself. He ignores the emotional distance, ignores the tension, ignores the inconsistencies. He keeps asking for reassurance from the same person creating the confusion in the first place. And that cycle drains a man psychologically. You stop trusting your own perception. You become anxious, hyper-alert, emotionally exhausted. You overanalyze texts, overanalyze tone, overanalyze silence, and eventually the relationship starts consuming your peace from the inside out. But here's the truth most men desperately need to hear. Real love does not constantly make you feel emotionally unsafe. Love can be difficult sometimes. Relationships require effort. But genuine loyalty creates emotional stability, not endless confusion. A woman who truly values you protects the emotional security between you. She does not slowly destroy it while demanding you ignore what you feel. That's why your intuition matters. Not because intuition is magical, but because emotional patterns always reveal themselves before people fully confess them with words. And I'm not telling you to become paranoid or suspicious of every woman.